All right. Hey, everybody. Rex Bear, Leak Project. Beautiful day today. Thank you for joining us this edition. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Bryan Lang, and we're going to talk about the ancient cosmic language. We're going to get into an illustrated exploration of the language depicted, the stars in the heavens, and their meanings. Check this out. In the beginning, there was one language. That language had power. God said nothing would be impossible for people to obtain if the language remained. God scattered the language and no longer entrusted the people with it. The language has continued to change and be corrupted. We take a simple approach to recover what was lost instead of struggling over every etching of ancient hieroglyphic forms to find the exact letters. We focus on the meaning and the archetypes across many cultures. We purposely put our feet on solid ground and gaze up at the skies to see what was written there that can never change. Wow. That's what I'm talking about. Buckle up, Buttercup. Bryan, great to meet you. Thank you for being a guest. What's going on?
Yeah, we want to talk about the language in context of how our world's been manipulated by it, and we've been vulnerable due to our ignorance of it.
Did you know that about 34 million households are having a tough time paying their electrical bills? And the electrical companies have increased their prices about 30% over the past decade in many cities. And you can actually save money on your electrical bill. It's pretty easy. You should order one of these. There's even a 60-day money back guarantee. So you have nothing to lose. It's 65% off and it's don'twastepower.com. I got mine a few months ago, plugged it into the breaker box. The green light turns on when you plug it in. It takes a little while for the energy to and the electricity to stabilize. It cuts down on dirty electricity. And go to don'twastepower.com. You can read the reviews yourself. It's been featured in many large channels and many major channels and outlets. And it's don'twastepower.com. Get yours, save 65%, save money on your electric bill, and let's get back to the presentation. God damn. Ignorance is not bliss, is it?
It's not.
You can pretend. I guess in some ways you can, but I beg to differ. So it does help you sleep better at night if you don't know anything, I guess, versus if you know about the dark side. But if you know about balance, there's an opposing faction, there's an opposite to everything, an opposite and equal reaction. So let's get into this, man. So tell us about you. And then I want to find out why you actually got into this study of the sun and the cycles and the stars and the language, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I do have a more thorough background in astrology. Um, Also have dabbled quite a bit in astrotheology, and which I've seen a bit of programs of that on your channel. Um, and I've got in with like scholars and Hebrew people, and they've introduced me to a lot of ancient stuff. And then I'm like, whoa, I'm like recognizing this stuff when I see it. And then that's led me to write and talk about it.
So when you say like astrology, give us an example. Did you go to college for it? Just something you're studying growing up, or
No, it's something I've had a mentor for and have studied for t about a decade now.
okay? And you decided to take that information and kind of sculpt this book or write this book out.
Yeah, I spent some time with one of my Hebrew friends, and he was introducing me to the earliest form of Hebrew, which is basically a modified Egyptian hieroglyph. And then when I was looking through that, I'm like, these are the star constellations, no doubt. I brought a scholar in on my team, Dr. Bryan Zhang, and we put a book together after we had some people review it and give us some feedback. And it was a project that took like a year or so. And here we are.
Let's take a look at that. I'm going to give you a screen share permission here, and do you have that hieroglyph to show us?
Um, that's in the book. We'd have to flip through pages of the book. I don't have that prepped. What I have prepped for today is I want to go and do some decoding of the Dendera Zodiac, which relates to this language, and want to kind of give you an introduction to that realm and some findings there that accentuate that. So I will be
Great.
pulling that up right now.
Yeah, Bryan, really glad you're sharing this with us. I'm fascinated with the zodiac, with the Egyptian and ancient Egyptian mythology, archaeology, The history is phenomenal. And I think a lot of what they teach us, when I say they, I'm just referring to modern historians and scholars that are supposed to be the experts. Most of them, I don't think they have a clue. Some of the stuff, yeah, maybe some of the newer Egyptian architecture and hieroglyphs. But if we go back and look at the really old stuff, I think they're missing some things. And I think that the zodiac itself is a huge component to the puzzle. It's many of these pieces, not all of them, but many of these pieces. So super looking forward to this. And you've got some slides you're going to share with us. I did want to show real quick people the book. I would definitely recommend, if you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy this information, pick this up. Is it best to go through Amazon, or where would you say, Bryan?
Yes, it's on Amazon.
Perfect. The Ancient Cosmic Language. All right. Now, this, tell us about this.
That's a picture of the Hathor Temple. This is where the Dendera Zodiac was found, which we're going to spend the duration of this podcast delving into. But around 1799, Napoleon and his troops came across this. It was buried in dirt. And at 1820, around about then, they sent a team back and they actually cut out the zodiac that was found there on the ceiling of the temple. And now it's known. It's you can see it now today in the Louvre Museum. So we have slides that show that museum from the outside. There's Napoleon right there. There's the Louvre Museum. You can go see it in person now today. And we even have a picture from the friend took of it that we're going to show you. This is important here because if you look closer at it, there's figures in orange, and it's in French, sorry, but if you look closely there, it's identifying deities on this zodiac. And when as an astrologer, I was totally expecting to have all the deities that represent planets align in their ruling or their home constellation, but that is not what I found. They are all aligned with their planetary exaltation alignment. And I'm like, what? That's what they're preserving in this was
Explain that to us.
um yeah, that sounds like a big shocking word, planetary magic. Like what magic? But really magic, if we're going to define it correctly, is the study of the subconscious mind. Think of how we would hack the mind of the public and what themes or magnets of the mind, that is what is etched in there. That is what I recognize. And as a point of like that sounds pretty wild and out there, but when you look at the idea, like, and you have this zodiac broken into 12 parts, to have like all five of them in their exact place, it becomes a strong mathematical improbability of it being just a coincidence. For example, to get one of them right would be a 1 in 12 chance, right? And
Uh-huh.
then to get another one would be like timesing that again, or at least arguing that there's 11 other spots for the next one to land in the right one. And then so on and so forth. And the next one to be right, you would times that by 10, then by 9. But you add up the mathematical equation. If you want to get into some mathematics, like it is a very, very, it would be more of a conspiracy theory to dismiss all of them in their exact perfect places for their planetary exaltations. So it's
When you say
definitely,
planetary exaltations in the perfect place for the planetary exaltations,
yeah,
um,
yes,
I
go
don't
on.
understand what you mean by that.
Will you go to the next slide? It will be a little easier to see. So if you go to that, what I've done there, if you want to zoom up just a little bit, is I've drawn all the zodiac constellations over it to where you can see that how they're all fitting around the zodiac, right? And then where the deities are, I've circled, just put a circle around them in a unique color. And in doing that, those those are alignments. Those are planetary alignments. And where they're aligned with their zodiac, each one of them has been an exact hit. They're called an exaltation. It's a certain alignment that has an exaltation. For example, Mars, if you look at where the red is, it's aligned with Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And it's not just pure astrology. You've gone into the realm of magic, how magicians would use these planets, how people would use these themes to like win over the masses. Like our movies are based on like all these themes. You don't write and get a movie or a show and get tons of people to tune into them without using a couple of these themes. And that's what we're going to really dive into when we go to the next slide. And it's just really shocking. It's like you go back to like some of the oldest civilizations we know of, and that's what they're preserving. They're preserving how to control the people. And it's just like, wow. So this is
So
why I
what is
felt
so this says Venus, so we're looking at Venus right here. And how and what is Venus exalted? Where
yes, Venus is actually right above it. That if you go to the next slide, it's going to be a little more accurate. I did some changes on that. Go to there. So that's the deity for Venus if you zoom up onto it.
where's the
Yeah.
deity? Which one's the deity?
Go to the Mars one. The Mars one is it's just a little off. It's just right. The deity is just right of the fish for Venus on the green circle. The circle I
Oh,
just
okay, okay, I
planted a
see it.
little
I
off.
see him. I see him.
That's
Okay.
Venus. The red circle around that deity is Mars. And these are what the scholars have identified at the museum. You go to the pink one. I I believe that's Isis. Some other people can debate that. The scholars didn't identify that one. That was me. You go to the yellow one. That is what we would call Jupiter nowadays. And if you go to
Isis, I would think would be connected to Venus, though.
yeah, we could zoom up on them and look at them in French, and I don't remember what names they use for them because I don't
Okay.
speak French, but they use a little bit different words. Um, Isis, I would relate to a moon god. It's a feminine deity. That one's a little bit speculation, but the other ones are pretty thoroughly reviewed, and scholars have been the one that I have identified those and not mine. The one down at the bottom there in pink, I think that one's pretty clear. The ram with curly flat horns is usually identified as Khnum or Khnum. So, and it's a Egyptian god of first creation, god of the Nile, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to dive into these meanings so that we can kind of, as the audience can look at it and kind of measure, are these themes really magnetic? Are we really drawn to these things um, more so than not? So I do want to dive into what they actually mean, like in an astrological sense.
All right, yeah, let's go. Tell us. I'm all ears,
So
man.
okay, so let's start with Saturn. Um, and with Saturn aligning with Libra, Libra is like the partner, and Saturn is like a reaper, like an omen of destruction. And in this theme is represented in movies by the needing to save the damsel in distress, like having a woman in need of help. It can also be represented by having the idea of a romance, but there's a retractionary force within it, within the story. For example, Romeo and Juliet, Avatar, there or Pocahontas, where there's different racial divides. And this is the meaning carried forth from these writings. When you align that planet with that constellation, that's the theme, the archetype of it. And it's not just that. That theme can be used in elections too, to help us move us on who to vote for. For example, it's not always done by our electoral process isn't always won by who's the best candidate, but it's more the lesser of two evils. So this would be more about destroying your partner, the accusation of an affair on your partner or your opponent. Um, and so this is the theme that's been carried forth etched in here in Dendera. Like all those themes are like magnetic. It's why you can get like strong cult followings off of movies like Twilight. They're built on these. And that's why we show up to certain movies because like if as you'll see, we'll basically are going to cover the concept about every movie that's ever made when we go through these themes. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I thought I was unmuted. I was going to say, so I'm looking at Saturn right now, and I can see the deity, and then it's in what house? Where?
It's in Libra. It's aligned with
Libra.
Libra.
Okay. So Libra's like the balancer, the the one that has the scales, right? That's like
Yeah,
weighing.
yeah. Libra is it's a symbol of the partner, the counterbalance. Like it's the wife, it's the spouse, it's the companion, it's the person you want to be with. And and so when you align Saturn on it, it brings up all those themes that I had mentioned. So, and then I have it circled, the god Saturn,
Now,
there.
is that Kronos?
That would be our modern day interpretation of it.
What's the deity in ancient Egypt?
I
What's
don't remember off the top of my head. It was all written in French, so,
Oh
and
man.
sorry.
Bonjour. Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Well, do you want to go to Jupiter now? Tell us about Jupiter.
So Jupiter is in the house of Cancer. If you look right there, where you see the crab to the right, it's drawn in black. Yes, that is Cancer. Cancer is the mother or the home of the zodiac. It represents safety. So, in understanding this theme that was preserved, is because Jupiter's expansion. It's what's going to make that grow or expand, or what, and it's once again going to be a magnet. So it's the idea of the concept that our minds are drawn to feel safe. We want more than anything to feel safe. And that's why insurance sells pretty well. And it's the idea of like also preserving like a future heir. Like the whole idea in Star Wars, for example, where the idea was to hide away Luke Skywalker and Leia so they could come back and save the day later. The idea of hiding away Aragon because before in Lord of the Rings, so he could grow to be more strong. It's the idea of Moses being hid away, Jesus being hid away. The idea that you would preserve a future savior that could come back and triumph even when you lose in that era, if that makes sense. Even though you have a losing battle where the evil lord's in power, right? So this is used in storytelling, but it's also used with the public keeping us at like regular mundane 9 to 5 jobs because it's safe. We have a consistent paycheck. We have consistent food. And once again, it's a magnet of the mind that the elites, even from ancient days, understood. So,
Magnets of the mind. Okay. I like
yes,
that.
so that's probably the best way to say it is these are the magnetic concepts of the mind.
That attract you to those archetypes.
Yeah, and we should understand it in their opposite. If you put the planet in the opposite of its exaltation, it's called a fall, and it becomes like a repulsive theme. So, for example, if you put Jupiter in the opposite of Cancer, which is Capricorn, it would be the expansion of government. And who gets excited about the expansion of government, right? It's kind of repulsive it or
The
expansion.
government gets excited. The
They do.
the money funders, they're like, whoa. Yeah, they love that.
But
Real quick, I gotta say, this crab looks very similar to petroglyphs that we found here in the Four Corners area, New Mexico. I mean, that's remarkable. So I think that's what they were. It's not all about plasma apocalypse and these petroglyphs. Like I think a lot of these are actual zodiac signs and the Kachinas and um, yeah, Angela introduced me to your work also, and she went on a petroglyph tour with us recently, and she uncovered a few of these zodiac signs. So I think that's very interesting. Okay, please
yeah,
continue.
yeah, yeah, she would have had some good insights on seeing those things out there with you.
So, okay, so tell us about Mercury. We're at Mercury now. And would this be Thoth?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And then the house of Thoth, Mercury is exalted where?
In Virgo. So if
Virgo.
you go up a little bit, Virgo's kind of upside down drawn on that. If you'd have to flip it a little bit. But Virgo's a representation of like church, order, um, the medical profession, any order, organization, um, and so on and so forth. So think of things in terms of like a control system. And Mercury is what the power of communication, because Thoth was known as like a scribe, like a deity that was more of a spokesman or a traveler or a communicator, right? Same thing with Mercury. And when you put those two together, it's the idea that like what's taught, what's the spoken word needs to come from an authority, that it needs to be authorized, it needs to come through official channels. And that's where it's been a kind of a magnet for the mind. A lot of people, if you can throw the word like conspiracy theory out there, they'll disbelieve it because it's in opposition to this planetary exaltation theme. And it's also the idea of order and organization. For example, if I was to make a video on the zodiac and tell you, hey, each zodiac sign is this superhero, and I was to do 9 or 10 of them, people would be raging that I left out 2 or 3 of them, right? And
Right.
it's the same principle here. You have a power of communication and getting things out there. If you can be orderly and organized and put everything in a graph, everything in its proper place, fulfill every cross every T, dot every I. It's the idea of completing and organizing and giving everybody a full picture. And what's the opposite theme of this is the subconscious mind. It's people don't want to have be spoken to like a dream state where like a dream, it's out of order. It's it's symbols and not said clearly. Anyways, this is the theme that of how to communicate, how to control the systems of authority, the schools, and if you can put that under control, you can control the masses and what they believe overall.
I don't see all the planets here. I'm wondering if the one down bottom left here that you have circled, if that could be like Uranus. I'm wondering.
I have it associated with the sun because he has a
Ah,
solar disk above his head.
ah, okay.
And this is the one that wasn't identified by the scholars that I identified on my own.
Okay.
Because I was looking where the sun, if you had all other 5 right, there's 2 other main exaltations, and it's the sun and the moon. So they got the planets in the right places, but so and the scholars identified those, but I started looking for the sun and the moon and came up with possible correspondences. But the sun, Canum, the ram, is where the sun exalts. It's the theme of this exaltation is basically the Superman archetype. It's the idea that of superheroes. We sign up for movies over and over again where somebody gets super powered. And we also are very drawn to if people are going to empower us, lift us up, exalt us. It's the idea that we want our egos boosted. So if somebody can flatter us, um, they can kind of get their way with us. Or if they're going to empower us, give us money, um, that's the theme that's been preserved there.
Hmm.
And once again, it's in line with Aries, the Aries constellation.
Where's the Aries constellation at? These two?
It's it's by the bull left. So the bull has the red star, and Aries constellation's 7 o'clock, just straight towards the center. Go up a little bit. If you scroll up a little bit, you got the bull Taurus on the left, Aries on the right.
Okay.
They're all in order, exact order of the zodiac.
What are these two deities right here?
I don't have them. I don't know them right off the top of my head. I've had
I
to
wonder
get
if that's
Scott.
what's that?
I've when I've picked out and highlighted the ones I've done, I've had scholars like walk me through and show me which one was which.
I wonder if
Because my
the think that's Gemini, possibly. Could that be Gemini?
no, Gemini's up. You have to scroll up to see Gemini. Yep, to the left. 11 o'clock, I got Gemini at. And it's drawn over the 2 stick figures next to each other.
Oh, right there.
Yep.
Ah, okay, that would be Gemini. Interesting. Okay. Oh. So there's like different rings there's different deities, and then you've got the deities holding them all up.
Yeah, we should talk about the deities holding them up. This is where I take some issue with some of the scholarly work. Um, some of the principles you brought up before at the start of the podcast, it encompasses the idea of polymath. And polymath is a principle that's used in like modern colleges. It's the idea that you would have a major and a minor, and the idea that you would get get an expertise in a different field, and it would help strengthen you in your main field that you're working in. And I really feel that when we get to interpreting all these Egyptian stuff from their star cults, that we should at least have some more understanding with the cosmos and astronomy. And for example, if you go to the bottom left corner and you see the figure of Nut holding up the zodiac, and it's you're looking right at her between 7 and 8 o'clock. The idea that the scholars identified, that's the east direction. It's like, wait. That's the east direction. The east direction is the spring equinox, and that's aligned with Taurus. If you do that, you have to push the timeline of this back to 2000 BC. Right now, scholars are saying this comes from 50 BC, according to their expertise. But like both two ideas that they have are kind of contradictory. And I think the problem lies in the fact that the lack of astronomy, the lack of knowledge in those realms of understanding the cosmos.
So you're dating this to be about 4,000 years old?
Yeah, the age of Taurus is what, 4000 BC to 2000 BC. That's if the scholars are right on identifying that as the east. Because on our spring equinox, if we understand the precession of the equinox, at the springtime, right now, we're aligning somewhere between Pisces and Aquarius. We're in a transition of an age. But back at 2000 BC, it was Taurus aligned at the east. And if they're identifying that as the east, that woman in the pillar, that goddess, then you would have to date it that. I'm not fully sold on that idea. I'm still open because I think that what they did there, and I have a different theory, and that is that they put Nut, who's the goddess there, they put her at all the four fixed seasons. And if you look at the two Horuses at the very bottom, you see how they're doing a handoff of the seasons? Like the hands are overlapping. You see that?
Yeah.
That is the transition of the seasons. So it's from not Venus, Pisces to Aries. So Pisces is the mutable sign that kills the winter, and Aries is the sign that takes it and is cardinal and starts the springtime. So there's kind of a handoff of the seasons there. So I view it more in that, and I'm open to the 50 BC time frame, although they've obviously copied some much older concepts. So I don't dispute that. I more dispute the scholars thinking that that's the alignment of the East. I think it's an alignment of the fixed seasons, because when we get into Taurus season, it's the very middle fixed part of spring. And I think that's why she gets her own space there without a handoff. And the handoff's happening because there's a handoff of the seasons. So
I
that's more
mean,
my interpretation.
could this potentially be 20,000 years old? Could it potentially be as old as like if we were to take a full zodiac turn and go back to that time previous, 24,000 years ago or something?
I'm not an expert in that field. I certainly have no horse in the race, but I'm pretty open and impressionable. But this is clearly ancient knowledge that goes back really old. The knowledge of it is definitely older than 50 BC. And scholars would even admit that it has many things from even Babylon in it.
Bryan, I'm like thinking to myself as you're talking about this, who would commission this? Who would say, okay, builders, okay, sculptors, okay, astronomers, put your work together. Let's make this right now. And I want you to make it perfect and have all the houses aligned with the planets and exaltations and have it linked to our subconscious mind. Put it all there and make it perfect. Like, who did that? You know what I mean? Like, and the amount of wisdom and knowledge you would need to put that together, it just seems almost surreal. How would you know about the zodiac? How would you know about a full zodiac cycle and all the different ages? How, unless you lived through these ages many times? How long would you have to live and survive as a culture and document this information to be able to explain a full great year, a full zodiac term? You ever thought about that?
I think those are very good questions. If I had any speculation, I think a ruler, somebody in power, put this there because these are the emblems of power. Whoever understands these principles understands how to rule, understands how to control people.
But why would they want other people to know about it?
Perhaps it was in a sacred temple and where they kept it for their posterity to hang on to. And if you build it like that to preserve it and you made it a sacred place and you excluded regular people from visiting it, it could be a way of holding on to your power.
Like truly the gods. Now, the verbiage of God and gods, I'm sure you have a very differing opinion than I do and many others. I'm not talking about, like the old school interpretation of like Caucasian Jesus with long blonde hair or some guy with a long, white hair and a long beard in the clouds, perfectly muscular. No, I think it's far different, but very powerful beings that seem to be very knowledgeable. Maybe the progenitors of civilization put this there and built this so that they could pass it on for generations. It almost feels like it feels like there's different keys that are in this, that if we know how to use these keys, we could truly unlock so many mysteries of the universe and ourselves. Maybe we could truly understand the origins of where we came from, where we're going, what we're doing, why we're here. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah. Even at the least, somebody could study these concepts and learn how to be a better story writer because you could learn how to write stories that would draw people in or learn how to act a certain way to pull people in or push people away or to even hide things. Because if you go into the falls of these, which are the opposite of these alignments, it becomes like such a repulsive energy that people don't even like to look in those areas or even think about those concepts. So where we have the magnets of the mind pulling one way, the very, very opposite of themes of them repulse people away from them. You can hide things there. You can hide things from the masses if you do things with those opposite themes.
Like numbers and
Yeah,
archetypes.
yeah. And that's what my book goes into is we have all the planets numbered. You go through the hieroglyphs. They're A and they're like, for example, we have A and then we have separated from that. We have number one and we have B and we also have two, which is separated. The ancients, especially the Hebrews, had it all numbered. Their A and one was the same thing. Their B and two were the same thing. Their C and three were the same thing. They don't have C in their alphabet, but as an allegory, that's kind of how it is. And
Now,
so
the language came from, oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to ask a quick question. The
uh,
language comes from uh the Metatron cube.
I'm not positive on the very origin of the language. Where we picked up and where we studied it was looking at the oldest form of Hebrew that we could find, which was basically a reformed Egyptian. So it had very strong Egyptian influence. I don't know where it came from before that, but it certainly were depictions of what was drawn out into the sky. So if there was, so you'll want to tell me more about the Metatron's cube.
Well, I
But
want to, okay, so what's that image? What is the hieroglyph that you said the Hebrew language most likely originates from?
I have that. That's more stuff that I have in my book, where I have pictures and drawings of that in the book.
Right, but what is it? What is it? Like, what's it called?
It's called Early Hebrew.
No, the hieroglyph.
What do you mean by the hieroglyph?
You said that you took there's an ancient hieroglyph
I
that
was
the Hebrew language originated from.
Yeah, it has like Phoenician, Egyptian influences, but early Hebrew was actually hieroglyphic. It was basically depictions, drawings. I'm using that as a word as a description, not as like, oh, it was this hieroglyph that it was found in. It's been found on many different artifacts and on ancient writings, but I'm using just hieroglyph to describe what it looked like.
What
It
can,
look
what can I look up on my own to show people as a reference? Because there's something in my mind, and it also connect. You asked me a question about the Metatron cube, so I wanted to see if there's a similarity there.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a picture. I'll show some pictures of this. Can you see? I don't know if you can see that well, but that's a picture from the book where we show the constellation next to the early Hebrew. You could just type in on a Google search even and pull up early Hebrew or early languages, and they'll just show this flood of different shaped characters and how they evolved. Evolution of language. Yeah, on a Google search, we'll just pull up all these
Let's see.
drawings of it.
Okay, let's see here. Metatron. Here we go. I'll show this real quick. So this is the Metatron cube. It's sacred geometry symbol.
Right.
So that's where I thought some of the Hebrew language had possibly originated from, like old Hebrew, but it looks to me like you've actually taken a lot of the zodiac signs and you've connected those to the Hebrew language also.
Yes, we have them all aligned. The first 10 in the numbering are the planets, and then the last 12 are the zodiacs. And when you look at the numerology of it and you plug those numbers in from the Hebrew language, they mean the same thing when you go through the Bible. It decodes the numbers of the Bible. For example, you've heard the number 660 and 6, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And John gives a meaning in the book of Revelation. He says that it means that you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade. Okay, well, that's what the numbers of those meanings are. 6 is Jupiter, and it means to be able to buy, sell, trade, or expand. 60 is government control. It's Capricorn, and that's the corresponding character that it represents. In the earliest hieroglyphic form, it was a symbol of suffering, and it was a thorn. It was a depiction of a thorn. Capricorn was, and Capricorn's the goat, and it's known for being loud, complaining. It's a symbol of suffering also, and and that's why when Jesus wears the crown of thorns, it's going through the astral theology of his descent to the darkness, to the tomb, a symbol of his suffering. And anyways, and getting back to the numbers, 100 is a hieroglyph of a sun on the horizon. It's a symbol of like death. And when you put 100 next to any number in that early Hebrew, it magnifies it, puts the original character such as 6 on its opposite. So and if you put 10 with it, it magnifies it and it gives it a stronger correspondence. So like where 6 would be um, being able to buy, sell, or trade, 600 would be the end of buying, selling, or trading, not being allowed to. So he's giving you in the book of Revelation the actual meaning of those characters. So 600, 60, and 6, 60 at the middle, government control, not being able to buy, sell, or trade on the one end with 600, and then being able to buy, sell, or trade with 6. Those are the meanings of the numbers.
Jump on over to our Patreon page. You can watch the rest of this uncensored, and because I have hundreds of hours of exclusive content, ad-free, uncensored, unedited, stuff that we can only talk about on Patreon. Beyond the cutting edge, and you'll get access to it for only $1 a month. And if there's an interview that you want me to do, a guest that you want me to get on the show, or a topic that you want me to discuss, if you leave a comment over on Patreon, I'll do my best to get that guest on the podcast or that subject. And I'll even do my best to get back to you here on YouTube. And your contributions greatly help Leak Project. So check us out over on Patreon, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel here and hit the bell for all notifications, and check back daily for new podcasts, because we upload podcasts pretty much every single day. And has anyone told you today that you're awesome? Because you are.